circumstances surrounding this crash?
Well, at the moment, the focus seems to be on technical problems. We know that the plane went down shortly after takeoff in Tehran. The crash site is not very far from that international airport. And as I say, the emphasis is on technical problems, but clearly a very serious crash indeed. The latest report is that everyone on board has died. That's 168 passengers, 9 crew members. And at the moment, everyone is trying to call for calm and saying, look, this is a technical problem that is not linked to what's going on between the US and Iran. Even Russia, who have had a pretty frictional relationship with Ukraine for the last few years, even they are sending their condolences, as well, of course, from the Ukrainian president.
168 passengers on board with 9 crew members. Do we know the nationalities of the passengers at this stage?
Well, the early reports suggest that they are from all over the world. The overwhelming majority seem to be from Iran, but there are, of course, reports of passengers from Ukraine, as you would expect, because the airline was heading towards Kiev, but also reports that there were British passengers involved, Afghan, and people from all over the world. So right now, embassies are scrambling to try get information about whose citizens were on board, but it is looking like the first real major international tragedy of 2020.
What airline was this, Dan?
Ukrainian International Airlines. So that's a national airline in Ukraine, flying from Tehran to Kiev, as I say, but it was a Boeing 737 plane. So it won't just be Ukraine looking at this. Already Kiev has suspended all flights between Ukraine and Tehran, but of course Boeing will be looking at it as well. They will be concerned to find out what they're talking about when there are these reports of technical problems, particularly as Boeing has had a rough ride in recent years. So both Boeing and the Ukrainian government looking very closely at what's happened.
Do we know the safety record of this particular airline?
We don't know the particular ins and outs of the Ukrainian this particular this flight route, but generally in this part of the world, in Russia and Ukraine, there is of course a pretty bad reputation. This was, of course, you remember the shooting down of the flight that was going over Ukraine that killed more than 200 people. That was due to the Ukrainian conflict. But both Russian-made planes and in Ukraine have had a pretty checkered safety records. Domestic airlines in Russia, for instance, that have gone down frequently with many hundreds killed over the years. So this will add to concerns looking at both Russia and Ukraine that they need to do more to improve their safety procedures.
Dan, let's just talk about the tensions between Iran and the United States and Russia's response to what's happening. We've heard calls for restraint from countries like China as well as Saudi Arabia. Russia is among the nations that supported this nuclear deal. We know the latest developments with regards to that in terms of the centrifuges. Just talk to us about Russia's response to all of this.
Well, Russia is an Iranian ally. They are working together in the Syrian war, but Russia is trying to de-escalate the situation. It doesn't want to see a major regional conflict in the Middle East. It has its own assets and interests, strategic aims to defend. It's trying to calm things down, but it is deeply skeptical about US intentions. Just in the last 30 minutes, we've had Pushkov, a senior Russian politician here, saying that he believes that US strike on Soleimani was the first step towards creating a major war in the Middle East. He thinks the US will now respond to these Iranian-backed strikes in Iraq, and he's deeply cynical about people like Mike Pompeo, John Bolton in the US. He thinks they want to engineer regime change in Iran. So the Russians are very wary of the US. They're trying to calm things down, but all the while standing by their Iranian allies, saying that their condolences are with Iran, that the nuclear deal, as you say, should be started back up, and that it is the US who's the main provocateur.
Yeah. All right, let's leave it there. Our correspondent in Moscow giving us an update on the plane crash, the Ukrainian plane crash that killed at least 180 people shortly after takeoff.